Alrighty, welcome to the book club. Welcome to day number 1. Excited that you are here. We're going to start here in a couple of minutes. If you're watching the replay, you can fast forward to the time of starting. If you're watching this live, what's good? Excited that you're here. Welcome to the book club. Day number 1, Outwitting the Devil book. Start here in a few minutes. Good to see everybody. Welcome to day number 1 of our book club. October 14, 15, 16, and 17. It is 10 p.m. Eastern. We will kick off here in about 3 minutes. If you're watching the replay, you can fast forward. If you're watching this live, get into a quiet place, grab some water, and be ready to participate in this conversation. It's going to be a lot of fun. Starting here in about 2.5 minutes. What's up, Linda? Good to see you. What's up, Aaron? Krista? Let me know in the chat where you're tuning in from. Feel free to send out this YouTube link. Welcome everybody to tonight's call. We are going to be live here for the next 4 days at 10 p.m. Eastern. Book of the month is Outwitting the Devil. It's going to be a powerful conversation. Start here in about 90 seconds. Continue to spread the word. Let people know we are live. And it's going to be a lot of fun here. What's up, Aaron? Good to see you. San Jose in the building. California in the building. What's up, Marlon? Good to see you. I would send this YouTube link to somebody that wants to get some a lot of fun. All right, we're kicking this off here in 1 minute. Watching the replay, fast forward. Get into a quiet place unless you're driving. Maybe have the book if you have Outwitting the Devil. Grab the book if you haven't ordered it already. Start here in about 30 seconds. What is good, everybody? How are y'all doing? Let's get this camera on. Good to see you. Good to see you. Let's get this camera up here. Welcome to week number 1, or really month number 1 of our book club. Let me get the chat live up here. Yeah, let's not talk about the Dodgers right now, but excited that you're here. We are going to spend the next couple of days together reading one of my favorite books. Now, we're not going to read word for word. We have a game plan here. We're going to break this down into 3 chapters per day over the next 4 days. But there's just some things that I would encourage you to do as we get this thing started. One, whether you have the book or not, I encourage you to take notes. Number 2, engage in the conversation in the chat. Maybe tonight, but really the next couple of days, I want to bring a few of you guys that are following along. I actually want to bring you onto these calls to share, your thoughts, your notes, your testimonial. And for those that don't know, I did a book club during the pandemic. It used to be called Midnights with Mike. We did it on my Instagram Live. We had hundreds of people. We built it up to hundreds of people a night tuning in. And we were talking a lot about this book right here called Outwitting the Devil. I'm going to give you the background story here in just a second. But 3 chapters a day. We are not going to read word for word. I already have this whole thing outlined. I bought a brand new book just for this book club. So I'm excited that you're here. But most importantly, engage in the conversation. It's going to be a lot of fun. And I'm doing this on YouTube, right? Every single night for the next 4 days. You can click the link above to get notified when we're live. I'll send you just a quick email, 30-minute reminder if you want. Club once a month. I already have the next book picked out for November, and we'll release that on day 4. I have a special guest joining on Wednesday. One of my friends, he's worth well over $3-4 million now. He's gonna be coming on here and talking about this book, what it's done for him. So if you're watching this live, appreciate you for watching the replay. Put a 1 in the chat if you're ready to get this thing started. So quick background story. If you don't know, the author of this book is the same guy that wrote Think and Grow. And Napoleon Hill wrote Outwitting the Devil after he wrote Think and Grow Rich. Okay. Now, if you don't know Napoleon's story, okay, just the quick cliff notes here. Napoleon hit from it. It was a high-paying business, walks away from it, and meets an individual by the name of Andrew Carnegie. Okay, Andrew Carnegie is one of the most important people in American history. American steel industry would not be what it is without Andrew Carnegie. And if you take his worth, what it would be today with his worth, and he meets Andrew Carnegie. Andrew Carnegie likes Napoleon, okay? This is how Think and Grow Rich comes about. And Andrew Carnegie said, we're going to read it here in the book in a second, tells Napoleon, I'm going to introduce you to all my wealthy friends. I'm going to introduce you to all the successful people that I know. I'm going to open up my Rolodex, and I'm going to send you basically across the world to interview these people. And I want you to write a book, which eventually became Think and Grow Rich and many other books, The Laws of Success and all these other books that are kind of low key. And he puts together these success principles. And that's how, if you're tuning in here, the next 4 days, we're going to be spending some time reading Outwitting the Devil. So subscribe down below. Make sure you guys get registered for the book club up above. Right. So Andrew Carnegie opens up the Rolodex. Napoleon Hill interviews all these people in this book. We're going to go through a couple chapters here tonight. One day, Napoleon Hill is sitting in front of the Lincoln Memorial at night. Okay, this is how the story goes. He's sitting, basically, I think he was in his car. Time here tonight. We're going to go through this. We're going to challenge. We're going to really have a great conversation. So don't go anywhere. And he has this thought process, this outer body experience with the devil or with the enemy. And he's looking at the Lincoln Memorial just after the Great Depression ended. Now, I want to let you know something. If you don't know, the most important fact about this book is that this book was written in the 1930s. Do you know when this book was released to the public? It was published I think in 2012. And because of some of the information in this book that is controversial, okay, it led to not being published for like 70, 80 years. Okay, so let's get into it. If you're ready, drop a 1 in the chat. And once again, we're going to be streaming live here on YouTube for the next couple of days, going through this. So I'll let you guys know what page I'm on as we go through this, and we'll get to it. But think about that. Think about writing a book and it not being able to be published because some of the information is so challenging. Some of the information in it talks about, it's going to talk about religion. It's going to talk about how you fix the education system. Okay, I encourage you to send this out to a friend that needs to be on this stream here tonight. Okay, so that conversation, right, that led to Think and Grow Rich, Andrew Carnegie tells Napoleon, he says, 20 years of labor with no pay and possibly no recognition. How would you respond to this offer? So this is like that conversation that him and Andrew Carnegie have. And this is what leads to Andrew Carnegie introducing Napoleon Hill to Theodore Roosevelt, Thomas Edison, Rockefeller, Henry Ford, right? Think about the Ford company, Alexander Graham Bell, King Gillette, right? You guys know the Gillette razors? I need to get one, right? You guys liking this book club hair? Anyways, Andrew Carnegie was friends with all these people. He puts Napoleon Hill in the rooms, in the meetings, And for years, Andrew Carnegie gets no recognition. He's making no money. He's meeting these people. Okay. And then here's something that looks like Andrew Carnegie says. He says, if you undertake this job, you should, the many who have failed, you should carefully analyze thousands of people who have been classified as failures. And I mean, by the term failures. We're on page 4. Men and women who come to this closing chapter hearts upon achieving. As inconsistent as it may seem, you will learn more how to succeed from the failures than you will from the so-called successes. So this conversation Andrew Carnegie's having, right, with Napoleon, he's telling him that you got to not only interview successful people, but unsuccessful and failures to society, right? Put a 2 in the chat if you have learned from people in your life on what not to do. And I think sometimes social media is so bad and so toxic because guess what? It just looks like everybody's successful. Looks like everybody's, everybody's made it. Very dangerous, okay? But Andrew Carnegie here is saying that you can learn from people that don't have the results you want. So you guys, the background story. Now think about this. Then Napoleon Hill one night goes to the Lincoln Memorial in 1938, okay? And he has this conversation. Now we're gonna get into all that here today on tonight's call. So let's fast forward. I want to fast forward here to page. Now we're gonna go to chapter 2. I gave you guys some of the background story here. Okay, so let's fast forward here. I'm gonna unshare my screen and we're gonna get into this. Good to see everybody here. Hopefully you guys spend the next couple of days with me on this book club. And we're gonna be doing this once a month if it goes well. And I know it will. So take a look at this. Hill's work. So this is just some outline in the book. Hill's work was published during the Great Depression and indeed helped millions of people find hope and courage. So this is Think and Grow Rich. Okay, remember, think about the time in history, right? We're coming out of World War I, the stock market and Napoleon Hill is interviewing and telling people about this is how you have to have desire, you have to be successful. And that's really where personal development came from. It came from Napoleon Hill, okay? He says it is during great periods of stress that we find our will and our inner strength. With the current economic uncertainty, people are choosing or being forced and their families, and many will find great success. They will be the great stories of success we will be reading about a few years from now. Documented, Think and Grow Rich has made, so many, millionaires, right? We've probably heard that. Now, page 38, okay, I have the book here. You can read along or follow along. And I encourage you to, we're on page 38 here at the top. I encourage you to send this out to somebody, okay? Now, Napoleon Hill says, I have also discovered temporary defeat, page 38, and every failure and every form of adversity, the seed of an equivalent benefit. Just think about that. He's saying that every time you go through something in your life and it sucks, right? And it's challenging, it's not permanent. He says it's temporary. And if you can overcome temporary defeat and you can look for the seed of an equivalent benefit, great things might happen. Page 38 at the top. How many of you guys know that to be true in maybe your life? And then on page 39 at the top, it says every great leader of the past whose record of temporary defeat. It says failure and temporary defeat are part of the journey. Guys, right now we're building up to the interview. The juicy part of this book, we haven't even touched yet. We're going to go through and outline a couple chapters a day because we're going to go through the first part of the interview here tonight, and it's going to get good. And it's going to be a challenging conversation. Now, look, if you do not know how to think for yourself, you're freaking screwed. Like, you're screwed. If you say, I want to be in this book club, and you're like on fucking Instagram, like, you're in trouble. Excuse my language, but you're in trouble. Okay? Because you're drifting. Sometimes it takes somebody to tell you that. You're in a lot of trouble if you can't focus for a couple minutes. Okay, so don't worry about how many people are on here. Don't worry about the chat. Don't focus. Okay, focus. Let's go to page 42. Okay, take a sip of water. Page 42. And basically at the top it says the value of giving before trying to get. And then I'm going to go to the bottom here. It says the sole motive which inspired me to write this book. Okay, so this is Napoleon speaking. The sole motive which inspired me to write this book was a sincere desire to be helpful to others by sharing with them as much as they may be prepared to accept of the stupendous fortune which became mine the moment I discovered my other self. So Napoleon's saying that the second that I was there, and I think that's true for all of us, it says material and financial fortunes, when reduced to their most liquid terms, are measurable in terms of bank balances. Bank balances are no stronger than banks. Oof. The other fortune of which I speak is measurable, not only in terms of peace of mind and contentment, but as manifested in those that adapt at prayer. I've read this book like 8 times. I've done book clubs on this for years. Okay, I read this book. For those that don't know, this book was written in 1938. the Hill Foundation and family was so scared to release the information because of the controversial topics that we're going to go through in the next couple of minutes that they didn't publish it, print copies of it until 2012. Think about that. It's crazy. Okay. So that's powerful. Material and financial fortunes, when reduced to their liquid terms, are measurable in terms of bank balances. Bank balances are no stronger than banks. The other fortune of which I speak is measurable, not only in terms of peace of mind and contentment, but as manifested in those adapted prayer. My other self has taught me to concentrate upon my purpose and to forget about the plan by which it is to be attained when I go to prayer. I am not suggesting that material objects may be acquired without plans, but I desires into realities has its source in an infinite intelligence, which knows more about plans than the one doing the praying. Powerful. Powerful. Then he talks about a sign of how to pray. And then this is where it gets started. Okay, chapter 3. This is where the whole book club really begins. And I needed to give you some backstory. So put a 7 in the chat if you're ready. In the chat pinned at the top, you can click that and make sure you guys register for the book club. We'll notify you via email 30 minutes before we start. And we'll be live here on YouTube for the next 4 days. And if the feedback is good, we'll do this every single month. And it'll be a good, fun time. Tomorrow, I want to bring a couple testimonials on here. So, all right, chapter 3. One last time. At Abraham Lincoln at the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C. He had just traveled the world interviewing the most successful people. Okay, I just gave the list. Roosevelt, Rockefeller, Thomas Edison. Okay, remember, this is in the 1930s. He's in his car and he's looking at this memorial. And then the interview begins with the devil or the enemy, and whether you believe that is true or not, that's up to you. Okay? He says, this thought came to me one evening while I was sitting in my automobile in front of the Lincoln Memorial on the Potomac River. Within the shadow of the Capitol, with it came another thought. The world has staged an unprecedented depression over which no human being had control. None of us that are listening right now experienced the Great Depression. Maybe our parents or grandparents did. But could you imagine that, like, 2008 was nothing compared to 1929 to 1932. I realized, too, the opportunity had come to test the claim I had made hundreds of times an advantage. What, if any, I asked myself, were the advantages to me of a world depression? So he's sitting in the car looking at this memorial saying, this depression just happened. What can we learn from this? He says, while I floundered in a state of mental bewilderment, the devil must have been dancing a jig of rejoicing. At last, he had the author of the world's first philosophy of individual achievement pinned under his thumb and paralyzed with indecision. So the purpose of it. He says, as I sat there in front of the Lincoln Memorial, reviewing in retrospect the circumstances which had so many times previously lifted me to great heights, page 54, lifted me to great heights of achievement, only to let me drop to equal depths of despair. A happy thought was handed over to me in the form of a definite plan of action, by which I believed I could throw off the hypnotic feeling of indifference which I had been bound. All the way at the bottom, page 54, he says, mastermind, this is where it begins. Who's ready? Despite the fact I understood the power of the mastermind. There's a chapter in Think and Grow Rich, and it's in the Bible, right? A lot of this is all coming from the Bible. When 2 or 3 come together, right? Napoleon wrote in Think and Grow Rich, you want to seek mentorship, right? And then you want to bring mentors in a room and call it a mastermind, and you can take knowledge. You know what? That's what tonight is. This book club is a mastermind of all of us coming together and sharing our thoughts. I'm just reading it. I'm just outlining. I'm just a host. What can we learn? One thing each day. Despite the fact I had understood the power of a mastermind, I had neglected to appropriate and use this power. I had been laboring as a lone wolf instead of allying myself with other and superior minds. All right, and here's where the interview begins. And I already have goosebumps because who's ready? Who's ready? Okay. We're going to go through chapter 3, and then we're going to roll this conversation over tomorrow. Who's ready in the chat? All right, hit that like button if you're ready. Hit that like button if you're ready down below. Hit that like button if you're ready. All right, so Napoleon's in his car. We don't know if he was on, ayahuasca. We don't know if he was on drugs, but he has this conversation. Don't worry so much about the devil, right? Don't worry too much about that. So this is an interview. So I'm going to explain this to you guys. Question is going to be coming from Napoleon. Answer is going to be coming from the enemy, the devil, whatever you want to call it, okay? Here we go. So the question that Napoleon asked, he says, I've uncovered the secret code by which I can pick up your thoughts. The enemy replies, yes, I'm ready, but you must address me with more respect. During this interview, you will address me as Your Majesty. Napoleon says, by what right do you demand such royalty? And the enemy world, do you not think that entitles me to rate as royalty? Napoleon says, what's the proof? The enemy says, I have plenty of it. Napoleon says, well, elaborate. What's your proof consist of? He says, of many things. If you want answers, you'll address me as Your Majesty. Some things you will understand, some things you won't. In order that you may get my viewpoint, I shall describe myself and correct abode. He says, that's fine. Start by telling me where you live. The enemy says, my physical appearance? My dear earthbound, I have no physical body. I would be handicapped as those in which you earthbound creatures live. I consist of negative energy, and I live in the minds of people who fear me. I also occupy 1/2 of every atom of physical matter and every unit of mental and physical energy. I am the negative portion of the atom. If there's good, there's bad, right? We learn that in superhero movies. There's black, there's white. There's an opposite to everything, right? And that's what he's saying here, okay? Now, this is where, if you're a believer, especially like I'm a believer as well, he says, well, if you only occupy 1/2 of energy and matter, who occupies the other half? Position. And this is where I actually started to pay attention to this book. He says, what do you mean? He says, the opposition is what you earthbound call God. So in this interview, the opposition or the enemy is referring that God is real. Okay, that's great news for all of us. And if there is a God, that means there has to be an enemy. Yeah. And Napoleon says, so you have the universe divided up with God. Is that your claim? He says, no, not my claim, but the actual fact. Before this interview is finished, you will understand why my claim is true. You will also understand why it has to be true, or there could be no world such as yours, no earthbound creature such as you. I am no beast with a forked tongue and a spike. Here is saying that the devil, the enemy, is not a little guy on your shoulder with a tongue, you know? That's just what people paint that picture. And then Napoleon says, but you do control the minds of 98 out of 100 people. Think about that. 98 out of 100 people we know. And this is why this conversation is not for everybody, but I'm so glad I'm doing it on YouTube. Hopefully my YouTube account doesn't get deleted, you know? People are asking me for the link. Guys, it's on my YouTube. What are we doing with our lives? I literally sent you a reminder and a text where I was doing this. Come on. 1 second, guys. Okay, here we go. He says, I have not said that I do not cause all the measure of the world. On the other hand, I boast of it. It is my business to represent the negative side of everything, including the thoughts of you earthbound people. Napoleon says, how do you gain control of the minds of people? Enemy says, that's easy. I merely move human brain. I sow the seeds of negative thoughts in the minds of people so I can occupy and control the space. Enemy says, I employ tricks and devices to control human thought. My devices are clever ones. This is where the controversial situation is about to happen. I need to get my charger here in a second. Okay. He says, go ahead and describe your clever tricks. One of my clever control is fear. I plant the seed of fear in the minds of people. And as these seeds germinate and grow through, I use the space they occupy. The 6 most effective fears. Please write this down. The 6 most effective fears are the fear of poverty, the fear of criticism. I have goosebumps. The fear of ill health, the fear of loss of love, the fear of old age. You get so attached to that number that they give you, and the fear of death. Napoleon says, which one of these 6 fears serves you most? And the enemy replies, the first and the last, poverty. So the fear of being poor and the fear of death are the 2 fears that the enemy uses to bring life. I tighten my grip on all people through one or both of these. I plant these fears in the minds of people so deftly that they believe them to be their own creation. I accomplish this end by making people believe I'm standing just beyond the entrance gate of the next life. Of course, I cannot punish anyone through some form of fear, but fear of that thing which does not exist is just as useful to me as the fear of which does exist. All forms of fear extend the space I occupy in the human mind. How many of you have ever experienced one of those fears and it's just paralyzed you? Come on, let me know in the chat what that fear was. I remember when I got involved in business and the fear of criticism, the fear of what people thought, like the fear of rejection, the fear of like My friends not understanding what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. I mean, come on, like in the chat, be honest. Think about it. Which one of those fears? Let me repeat those. I'm going to stop here for a second. Poverty, death. Think about this. Why do people have midlife crises? They're getting older. Why do people turn 15 or 18 or 21 or like 30 or 40 or 50 and then they have a breakdown? Why does that happen? They fear that they're getting older. And that's one of the fears that the enemy uses. Like he uses that to keep us, hey, just stay right there. Hey, you know what? Just stay where you're at. The fear of poverty. I'll never get to that amount of money. I'll never make more money. I mean, this book is so good. Hopefully somebody's having a breakthrough here tonight. The fear of looking stupid. Yeah. The fear of failure. Criticism. Criticism is such a big one in business. And people fear the criticism of their families. Play my whole life thinking I'm not enough. Well, you are enough. You are enough. You just got to realize that you're enough. And you got to realize that those bad thoughts, we all have them, but we have to reject them. Right? Bob Proctor told me in 2014 in Vegas, you have the ability to accept or reject whatever you want. Yeah. All right, let's continue. We're almost done here, and we're going to wrap up, and I'll see you guys tomorrow on day 2. We've got a couple more minutes left, so stick with me, okay? So Napoleon goes on to say, tell me something more about the world in which you live. And then the enemy replies, I live wherever I choose. Time and space do not exist for me. I am a force best described to you as energy. My favorite physical dwelling place, as I have told you, is the minds of the earthbound. I control part of the brain space of every human being. The amount of space I occupy in each individual's minds depends upon how little and what sort of thinking that person does. As I've told you, I cannot entirely control any person who thinks. Hold on. To be honest, let me say the last sentence again. As I have told you, I cannot entirely control any person who thinks. That's it. Anybody who has the ability to think for themselves. That's why I wear this hoodie. You know what this hoodie says? It says defund the media. You know why? Because the media teaches you how to think. And maybe I shouldn't do this on YouTube because they censor people here. Anyways, who cares? Whatever. Think about that. If you have the ability to think, you can do anything. The point says, you speak of your opposition. What do you mean by that? This is where it gets good. Here's good news. He says, my opponent controls, talking about God, all the positive forces of the world, such as love, faith, hope, and optimism. My opponent also controls the positive factors of all natural love throughout the universe. The forces which keep the earth and are meek in comparison with those which operate in the human mind under my control. You see, I do not seek to control stars and planets. I prefer the control of human minds. Page 63 in the middle, it says, Napoleon says, will you tell me how you go about your job of preparing human minds so you can control them? And the enemy replies, I have countless ways of gaining control of human minds while they are still on the earth plane. The earth plane. Listen, my greatest weapon is poverty. I deliberately discourage people from accumulating material wealth because poverty discourages men from thinking up there. My greatest weapon is poverty. I deliberately discourage people from accumulating material wealth. I deliberately discourage people. How many of you have ever glitching? This shouldn't be glitching. Can you guys hear me? They really YouTube might not be the platform for this. I'm on Zoom and I'm streaming at YouTube. Can you guys hear me good? Yeah, I'm looking at it on my stream too, but my Wi-Fi is literally fine. Guys, we're going to move the rest of this to my Instagram Live. Go to my Instagram Live and we're going to move this. They're literally trying to